Hey everyone, it's Melanie from Road to the Farm. I wanted to show you a really easy way to can applesauce. It's one of my favorite things to can and one of the boys' favorite things to eat. And I've learned a really simple way to do it, so I wanted to share that with you. So the first step to making applesauce is to just take your whole apple. As long as there's no blemishes on it, you throw the apple in the pan. And then make sure you pick through your box though, because you don't want that going in. So these things are real simple. You get those out, and then the whole apple still goes in. The cores and stuff will all be removed later. And that's all there is to it. So once you have the pot all full of apples, then you're going to want to put about a cup of water in or so. And that way the apples don't scorch while they're starting to come apart and cook down. So you're going to cook these until they're nice and soft, and put the lid on when you do that. If you have a pressure cooker, you can turn it on, but it's not necessary. They cook down pretty quick, just as long as you have a lid on it so that they can steam in there. So one thing I find really useful when I'm canning is to get everything prepped and ready ahead of time. So the first thing I do is make sure that I've got clean jars. You can put about 8 pint jars in one canner load. So we washed those all up and got them nice and fresh. And then I also make sure that I have my lids and seals and rings ready. Or if you're using the metal ones, then you'll want to get those ready. I've got my jar lifter out so that when I start pulling hot jars out, I have the tool that I need without trying to scramble through my drawer. Here's my jar funnel, and that just makes sure that we don't have spills over the top of the jar. They're super, super useful. And you can actually buy a kit that comes with the jar lifter and the funnel, and it has a magnet for being able to pull the metal lids in and out of the water, and that's super useful for really cheap. You can get them on Amazon and at most grocery stores. The other thing that I do is I go ahead and fill my pot of water. This is in my canning pot, and that way I can start heating that water up so I can sterilize my jars. And then I heat one more pot of water, and that one is to keep my lids and rings hot so that they're ready to go as soon as I've got hot applesauce. So having all of this prepped ahead of time saves me from scrambling and spilling and just fumbling over what I'm doing. So this is what you want the apples to look like when they are done cooking. They're nice and soft, and we'll be able to run them through the sieve, and if you see, poke them with a knife and the knife just goes right into them, so they're super soft at this point. So we'll remove them from the heat, let them cool for a minute in a bowl, and then we'll show you what comes next. So once your apples are really nice and soft, then you're going to put them into this wonderful contraption that I got from my grandma. And this is, some people call it a ricer, some people call it a food mill, but it's just kind of like a strainer. It's got holes that the applesauce goes through, and all of the cores and the skins and everything stay in the ricer. And the beauty of that is you don't have to sit and peel and core and cut all the apples. You throw them in whole, and then you throw them through here, and it's real easy just to spin it around and it all comes pouring out. My 13-year-old loves to come in and help me, and usually this is his job. He does a lot of this for me and thinks it's great fun, so it's not something that's difficult. Is it yummy? No?
Yeah, apple.
Yeah, that's where the apples go, huh?
Go.
Where'd they go? I squished it. Squished it. Coming out of there, huh? So this is what your pulp should look like. It's fairly dry, and you can see it's clinging to the edges here. It depends on how thick your apple skins are. The soft summer apples will give a greater yield and be a little easier, whereas the long-term storage ones like these ones are, especially late here in January like this, they are going to give you a little less yield because the skins are so thick and they're a little more fibrous. So depending on what apple you use will make the amount of pulp vary. So before you start water bath canning, it's really important to sterilize your jars. It's not something you have to do if you are doing pressure canning. Pressure canning, you just make sure they're really good and clean. I usually run mine through the dishwasher. But for water bath canning, it's important to sterilize them. So you're going to put them all in the water and let them boil for 10 minutes. So while you're sanitizing your jars, you also want to make sure that you're heating your applesauce, and then throw your lids back in your other pan and get everything hot at the same time. So it's really important when you're canning to make sure that everything is hot. Use a hot jar out of the hot boiling water. Make sure your applesauce is still piping hot, and ladle it quickly into your jar. Any kind of big ladle or scoop is really helpful, and these jar or canning funnels, these are just invaluable. It only costs a couple dollars, so invest in one of those and you will love yourself forever for it. You need to leave between 1/4 of an inch and 1/2 inch headspace here. Anywhere between this rim and this thread will work great. And make sure that it's nice and clean. Now again, we're going to do everything hot. So we've got our lids and seals, they're hot, our applesauce is hot, our jars are hot. Now I'm using Tattler reusable lids. They're plastic, and it's something that I can use over and over and over again. They are kind of pricey, so this is something that we decided was a worthwhile investment. Our goal in homesteading was to get to where we weren't reliant on stores, and the seals on these last for a really long time, and it's something that we can use over and over and just have as our storage. Just like food storage, we have lid storage. These have been proven to work for as long as 20 years. So they've had stuff canned in them. They were created in the 70s, so they've been around for quite a long time. And we've had really great success with them. And in fact, I've had a higher rate of good intact seal with the Tattler lids than I had with the metal lids. So they're super easy to use. Don't be afraid of them. So to use the Tattler lids, what you do is you take the seal, put it on the lid, and then it goes on a nice clean hot jar. Everything's hot. And then you do the band a little bit different. This is the main difference between a metal lid and a Tattler lid. With these, you put them on, and for a normal jar, you would screw it down till it just stops. You don't crank it on hard. That's if you're doing a metal lid. For doing a Tattler lid, what you're going to do is screw it on, and you're going to take your hand and make sure the jar is free. As soon as it spins, that's all you want. If you do that, you will have great success with your Tattler lids. And then hot everything goes back in the boiling water. All the jars are filled and it's starting to boil. So we're going to set the timer for 20 minutes. That's the time that I need for pints at my altitude. We're right up around 4,800 feet. So I will put a link in the description to an altitude and time chart so that you'll know how long to do your applesauce for. And that's all you do. Just leave it alone and let it cook. So the timer just beeped, and now it's time to pull the jars out. Now if these were the metal lids, you can actually leave them to cool right there in the water bath canner. but the Tattler lids have to be cinched down tight. So you want something to protect your hand from the hot jar and that can absorb the water, and then something to cinch them down. And you don't want to leave them. The metal lids, it's not a big deal if they're in there for a little while, but these, just as soon as your timer goes off, you want to get a hold of them and get them cinched down just as tight as you can muscle them down. And be careful, they come out super, super, super hot. So we've gotten all 9 jars out of the canner. And what you're going to look for, and I'll show you in the morning what they look like, but this plastic lid is going to dip in. So instead of listening for the little pop or the ping that the metal lids do, you're going to look to see that it's got a real nice dish in it. And then you're going to make sure that you take the metal bands off. You don't ever want to store your canned goods with the metal band on, because if there's any kind of a seal failure in there, it can actually rust on there and you'll think that the jar is safe to eat, when botulism and nasty bacteria can be growing in there and you wouldn't even know because it would seem like it was sealed. So super important, don't store your canned goods with the rings on. And we'll see you in the morning. Good morning, everyone. So I wanted to come and show you what it looks like when the Tattler lids are sealed. They've got a real nice dish in them. If you feel them, your hands kind of rock back and forth like that. I brought out one jar here and put a lid on it that I just had in the cupboard. So this is not sealed, and you can see it's much flatter and it doesn't have the arc motion when you run your hands over it. So what you want to do is you want to take the bands off and check the seal, and the seal is good. Give a good pull on it too. You don't want it to, if it's sealed, it's not going to come off. I love putting stuff away knowing that there's not going to be any issue with it, and that if it does for some reason break a seal, I'm going to know about it and I'm not going to have to worry about ill effects for my family. If you can't pull it off, they're sealed. Food videos are hard.